Hi there, everyone. Welcome to AdvancePro University. Today we're going to be discussing the QuickBooks integration settings and how to configure them for a basic setup. So enabling the QuickBooks Sync will allow you to keep QuickBooks up to date with any interactions that have happened in AdvancePro. So this eliminates the need for any double entry. If you're setting up a new AdvancePro company and have existing data in QuickBooks, you can also perform a one-time import of customers, vendors, and products from QuickBooks into AdvancePro. So with a basic workflow, generally speaking, purchase orders, sales orders, customers, and vendors get created in AdvancePro. So you're going to see this, you're either importing orders or you're doing manual entries, and those are going to turn into sales or vendor purchase orders. Now from there, you're going to deal with the shipping or receiving, the operations, any manufacturing in AdvancePro, and the results are going to be an invoice or a bill, and those can be exported out to QuickBooks seamlessly. Now payment status in QuickBooks can also be synced back against the invoices sitting in AdvancePro so you know what's been paid from both platforms. Now, how the QuickBooks Sync works is it's manual or on a timer. It's up to you. It doesn't kick anyone out of AdvancePro or QuickBooks, and it does allow custom syncing settings to your general ledger, so you can choose which accounts different types of transactions are moving into. And like I said, the first time we can go ahead and import those initial records into AdvancePro along with some of your other settings like taxes and as well your additional currencies if you're working in multiple currencies. So as we move to AdvancePro now, what we're going to talk about is how to configure that QuickBooks Sync for the first time. So what we're going to do is we're going to come into Admin, and we're going to choose Site Settings. And the first area we're going to go to here is the QuickBooks tab. So this is where you can enable or disable QuickBooks syncing. So the first thing you can check off is, are you a QuickBooks user? And that's going to tell AdvancePro to start working with QuickBooks. You can then go ahead and set up your QuickBooks version, so desktop or online, and you want to make sure that you get this correct. It can be difficult to go ahead and change afterwards. So from this point, we can also move ahead and say we've got some other settings here. We can mark different things to export to QuickBooks for the first time. We want to move all of our transactions to QuickBooks. We certainly can. A couple of specific areas to focus on specifically are allowing AdvancePro to go ahead and query those QuickBooks. So that what that does is actually enables that payment status to come back into AdvancePro. And also, exporting the tracking number can be quite handy. So next, we can actually go and configure the integration itself now that we've enabled it and put in some basic settings. So you may need to start AdvancePro for this to appear after you've made those settings, but you're going to see this QuickBooks tab up at the top. So we're going to go into that QuickBooks tab, and we're just going to talk through what you'll need to do to go ahead and bring those up. So you'll come into QuickBooks and you'll visit the settings area. And so the first thing you're going to do is browse for your QuickBooks company file. And for this point, you will initially want the QuickBooks company file to be closed. Now, when we do this, we do strongly recommend that you start for the first time with actually a backup of your QuickBooks and maybe a sandbox AdvancePro company file as well. And this will allow you to work for testing purposes before you're syncing into a live QuickBooks file. Now in the next tab, you can perform the initial import. So we want to open up QuickBooks at that point, and we can import your initial QuickBooks items. And you can see if we're working with assemblies, we can either bring them in as AdvancePro item kits or assembly items, depending on whether or not you're going to be using our manufacturing module. Now, in the next stage, we get to choose which accounts we want AdvancePro to be exporting into. So we set up our general rules like our asset accounts, our income accounts, and so on for a general transaction. And these are the actual accounts in your QuickBooks file. So you can go ahead and click re-import, and that's going to bring in your account settings. So if you need to create any additional accounts, go ahead and do that. One thing I do want to mention is that the inventory adjustment accounts, you typically don't want these to be the inventory asset account. You do want to go ahead and make like a shrinkage account, and they can actually be the same account. You'll just not want these to actually be the inventory asset account. So go ahead and make an account for those. Now, in the next step, what we can do is actually make custom rules. So working by product category, for example, we can go and choose which asset accounts, income accounts, cost of goods sold account, or expense accounts we want those categories to sync into. You'll also see a little bit later some settings for each customer and vendor to sync into the correct account payable or account receivable. Now, the last area here is where you can set up your timer. So if you do want this to automatically export, you can go ahead and set this up so it can sync every 1 hour, every 8 hours, however often you like. You can set that up, and then AdvancePro is going to go ahead and contact QuickBooks. Now, when you do that initial setup, you will be prompted by QuickBooks to approve a certificate from AdvancePro, and the rights you can set up for it do include allowing AdvancePro to sync into QuickBooks even when your QuickBooks company file is closed. So that's a good setting to have, and I encourage doing that. Now, when you run your first sync or two, we do recommend that you let us know if there's any errors, and we're happy to help you with that. There may be some configuration that needs to line up between AdvancePro and AdvancePro's default settings and the way that QuickBooks is configured. So we're happy to help you with that. You can always come into the QuickBooks panel and take a look at your sync activities by looking at reports. And if there is any sync errors, and we might have a few, you'll see a little red flag. And you can always come and make that adjustment. One thing that's really handy is if you actually click on the reference ID, you're going to see this find and relink in QuickBooks as you're doing the export. And that's a really handy way to fix errors quickly, especially if it's missing an item. Now, a couple other things that you can do once you've got these initially set up is you can come into admin, and if you've got multiple currencies, you can sync your currencies up by clicking on that currencies panel. You're also going to be able to, you'll see re-export to QuickBooks. You're also going to be able to come into taxes, and you can actually go ahead and grab your tax codes from QuickBooks as well. So these can be useful for lining up all your tax codes between AdvancePro and QuickBooks. Now, you'll also see that there are some settings in terms of required vendor accounts, things like setting up a default tax agency that you may not have in QuickBooks, especially if you're a new QuickBooks user. So you will need to go ahead and set those up as well. So this concludes a really brief tour of how to start setting up your QuickBooks company file to sync with AdvancePro.